Hello guys, welcome back to Educator Fresh. Last time we began talking about behavior, and if you've not watched the previous two videos, please go and watch them in the behavior playlist, in the advanced level playlist. Today we are going to talk about types of learned behavior. So there are five, and we shall talk about one extra behavior at the end. So you have habituation, associative learning, latent learning, insight learning, and imprinting. So let's start with habituation. What is habituation? Habituation is learning to ignore stimuli that are not important or stimuli that are irrelevant or repetitive. When you place a scarecrow in a garden, the birds that are in that garden fear the scarecrow and they jump, they fly away. But when that scarecrow stays for a long time, they discover, this is not actually a threat. So they come back. You can see even here, some of them are even sitting on it. That is habituation. Learning to ignore stimuli that is irrelevant. When you begin threatening babies with some things and you don't fulfill that promise, after some time they learn, my mom always doesn't do that. They begin to ignore it. When you put a new ringtone in a phone, at first it distracts you, but the more it rings, it becomes less and less distracting. That is habituation. Latent learning. Latent learning is learning by exploring. Every time you visit a new place, you explore, you try to find out, you don't intentionally go to explore, but whatever thing you see in your brain is information that is stored and information that can be remembered when it is needed. So if you go in a new place and you, for example, see the toilets but you don't use them, the information of where those toilets are is going to be stored and it's going to be kept for when it will be needed. Such that the next time you come around, that information is going to just pop up and you could be using it with ease. So you'll know what routes should I take to get to this place, what routes are shorter, and so on and so forth. Another example is rats exploring burrows, which they stay in. They explore the areas of the burrows where they don't actually sleep, because a time may arise when they may need them. If you place rats in a maze, they are going to navigate that maze as fast as they can so that they can arrive to the cheese or to the end. And every time you put them back in this same maze, they are going to navigate it faster and faster and faster until a time where they will make no errors in navigating it. Now, talk about error brings us to the next type of learning, which is insight learning. Insight learning is the highest form of learning that an animal can apply. Insight learning involves thinking and it involves reasoning. You have to think about a solution and you have to calculate the solution. This type of learning is important in solving complex situations or solving problems. Human beings are good at insight learning. So in insight learning, we involve trial and error. You try out different things and you find out which thing is going to work for you the best. A good example is when a chimpanzee was placed in a room with sweet bananas at the ceiling. It learned to pile boxes so that it can reach the bananas. Now, this did not happen at once. It, of course, tried to jump, then it tried one box, tried two boxes, until it found the right length that was needed to reach the mangoes. Another type of learning that is quite unique is imprinting. Now, imprinting happens in babies. Imprinting is when during the first few hours of a baby, it learns to form a bond or forms a bond with the parents. And this is what we call the critical period. Goslings or ducklings or chicks become attached to the organisms they interact with during the critical period. So Konrad Lorenz, understanding this science, used this type of learning where he hatched geese and stayed around them in their critical period. And after some time, These geese began following him around. From when they were young, even when they had grown up, they kept on following him to the markets, to the shops, so on and so forth. This is imprinting. Another type of learning is associative learning. Associative learning is any learning process in which a new response becomes associated with a particular stimulus. So, for example, when you begin associating with a bell with food, food is a meaningful stimulus. All of us are stimulated. Food is a good stimulus, does not need help. But if you teach an individual to respond to the ringing of the bell by feeling hungry or by salivating, what you have done is associative learning. Involves the combination of meaningful stimuli with meaningless stimuli. A good example is classical conditioning. Classical conditioning is a process in which an animal learns to associate a previously neutral stimulus with a behavior that was once triggered by a different stimuli. For example, a scientist known as Ivan Pavlov carried out an experiment in which he sounded bells, and these bells were sounded at the time of giving food to dogs. Now, after doing this for very many times, it was discovered that even when they sounded the bells and didn't give the dogs meat, the dogs salivated because the dogs had associated the sound of the bell with food. That is classical conditioning. Another example is honeybees learn to associate floral colors with fragrances and fragrances with the presence of nectar. In other words, every time they see a bright color, they smell a good scent, they know that is a flower that has nectar. That is classical conditioning. The color of flowers is meaningless. Nectar is meaningful stimuli. However, they are combining color and nectar to give out the response of the bee coming to the flower. Another type of associative learning is operant conditioning. Operant conditioning involves trial and error, reward, and punishment. So here, this type of learning, the animal learns to carry out particular actions so that it can either receive a reward or it can avoid a punishment. All of us, when we were growing up, there are things we didn't do because we knew if I do that such and such a thing, my mom would punish me, my dad would punish me, my guardian would punish me. That is operant conditioning. Because they promised you punishment, you are not going to do that thing because you want to avoid said punishment. A scientist named B.F. Skinner executed this experiment in the Skinner box. So in the Skinner box, B.F. Skinner taught rats to respond to pressing a lever so that they can get a pellet, and then he also put there other stimuli which were rewarded by the punishment. This is an example of the Skinner box. So you can see the pellet dispenser, the rat here. Every time the rat pressed on the lever, it received a pellet. But if it pressed on the signal lights, it was shocked. So it learned not to press the signals. However, it pressed on the lever. Another type of behavior is complex behavior. Sometimes innate behaviors can be modified, can be modulated through practice and experience so that they become much more than they were before. A good example is flying in locusts. The young locusts are not good at flying compared to the adult locusts because the adult locusts have found more efficient ways of flying. In human beings, walking is a complex behavior because not all of us walk the same way. Talking is a complex behavior because different individuals speak different languages. It is the same apparatus being used, but it is being used to produce different sounds. Singing is a complex behavior because different individuals are either capable of singing or incapable of singing altogether. That is what complex behaviors are. In a culmination of it all, mating rituals are a very good example of complex behavior. We have a mating ritual of bees here. So we are saying for copulation to happen, the following steps have to happen. We have to have orientation. The male meets the female. The male calls the attention of the female and then begins to sing for it. What songs? I don't know. I don't speak the language of bees. Leaking and then attempting copulation. And if the singing was good, then copulation will be successful. That is what we are calling a complex behavior. So briefly, we have talked about 5 types of learning. We talked about habituation, latent learning, which is to learn by exploring, insight learning, problem solving. Then we talked about imprinting, and then we talked about associative learning. Under associative learning, we talked about classical conditioning and operant conditioning. In classical conditioning, we combine meaningless and meaningful stimuli so that the meaningless stimuli can also elicit a response. And then in operant conditioning, we give reward or punishment to either enforce or to discourage certain behaviors. Then finally, we talked about complex behavior. And complex behavior, we said, is innate behavior being modified or modulated to give different forms of the same behavior in different animals. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video. I remain Solomon for Educator Fresh. Please like and subscribe. See you next time.